Hello people on the internet, it's I, under name BT. Once again, a pleasure to be behind a microphone once again, talking with all of you. Yes, here I am with another vocalized video, as promised. Today we have a very fun little video. We're going to be discussing the current update in the Rush Duel metagame. I felt like this was a pretty good time to bring this up because the metagame has had a significantly drastic shift in competitive decks and representation. So before we get into it, I will disclose that all these decks are listed as first place winner decks, and I'm not accounting, well, I have no information on every other participating deck because it is from local stores and larger tournaments, so I'm only calculating the most consistently topping deck, which is of course first place. So if you're wondering why the numbers would be a little off or why there's few, that's the reason why, but this still gives off a good representation of which decks are doing the best right now and seeing possibly the most representation through their consistent use of play. So anywho, let's roll on over. First, let's look at the deck list. Wow, look at that, that is very diverse. So the format before this, of course, if any of you are familiar with competitive Rush Duel, is that the recent format was all about Light Machine and Ryuma. Light Machine being Light Machine, as of course you know, that's a pretty basic standout, while Ryuma has been a tier 1 contender, mostly tier 0 for most of his life, since the beginning of Rush Duel, which is Dragon and Spellcaster mixed. But now, as you can see, tier 1 and just all the good decks have been changed. So of course, first off, let's see the most represented deck. Well, partially most represented. This is by far the closest thing we can get to a tier 1 deck right next to Parallel, which is Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt is a very interesting contender. It's come up quite a lot in the current metagame, and it's come up in the past metagame as well. For this, it was a fairly niche deck, not many good summoning targets, and not too consistent. But after the recent additions of cards like Melody and Seven Ship of Treasure, the deck has been absolutely dominating the format, and including the last set where they got the Creator and Duck Sonic, which has made the entire deck seem much more consistent, and you can easily just dump your deck. Another fun little tech card that they use would be Scale Liberation. Scale Liberation is basically just says dump the top 5 cards of your deck, which is really good when you need to get 4 level 7s of different names in the graveyard. A very quick example of one of these decks. Here is an example of one of the topping competitive Thunderbolt decks, which is from Mr. or Miss, from Suna. Congratulations on your win, Suna. It's a very lovely deck. So as you can see, there's quite a lot here, and it's very intimidating. So of course, the first thing you're going to notice is the level 7 vanillas, which is actually Thunderbolt, not Thunderbolt, the Psycho and the Noodle Ninja, Sogen. And then Secret Order. Secret Order has also been a very important part of this metagame, which has been increasing the number of vanilla decks. But this has been a very popular stylization of Thunderbolt these days. You would play it alongside a level 7 vanilla engine of Secret Order, and you would play it with Melody. Now let's give a little bit of context into how this deck works, because most of you would be saying, okay, so it summons level 7 monsters, is that it? No. So of course we have Melody is the star of the show. Her effect, you can return 1 level 5 or higher monster you control to the hand. To select 1 set card your opponent controls, return it to deck. And if your life points are lower, add 1 level 1 psychic normal monster from your graveyard to your hand. So with this, you can easily get out infinite tribute fodder for Thunderbolt and remove every set card your opponent controls, which is devastating. At the highest number possible, Melody can return up to 7 set cards your opponent controls, but I'm doubting anyone's setting field spells these days. And of course, with the level 7 vanillas, they are just level 7 vanilla with different names, but with Secret Order, you would activate Secret Order, summon a level 7 vanilla, make it into a 3200 beat stick, swing over almost every monster in the game, and it can't be destroyed by trap cards, which helps deal the finishing blow. Then of course your basic Dragus and Shock-led Dragon, which is hidden right behind the card, along with a Meta Gies. And then after that, of course, it is your just basic staple cards and another fun little thing, which we will get onto later. Now onto the next Tier 1 competitive deck, which has been nuts. Has been seen in almost every single top-ranked deck. Though, in this category I'm doing, it is specifically targeted to support Parallel Gate. Not have Parallel Gate in your deck as a tech card, but be just directly Parallel Gate. So once again, to clarify what this is, because this is a new deck, unlike Thunderbolt, which has been just evolving. So what Parallel Gate does is, you dump your entire hand, you activate Parallel Gate, summon 2 normal monsters from your graveyard, or up to 2 normal monsters from your graveyard. That doesn't sound too great, but when you take on the fact that it has no level limit, you come to realize you're summoning 2 monsters with 2,500 or more attack points to swing at your opponent. And it's a very easy deck to play, it's a very flexible deck to play. You're going to have different variations, where the only goal is to send as many normal monsters from your hand or deck to your graveyard, then bring them all back. You can also pair this along with Secret Order, which is typically the normal way to go about this to get through more attack. I will be covering a video on this another day, talking about a very fun looking deck that uses Parallel Gate. So let's pick up the example deck from a great tournament winner. Here we have a Parallel Pyro from the winner of the person who used this deck. The winner is Yutaka. Congratulations, Yutaka, you made a brilliant deck. So this is an interesting variant. Most variants would use Blue Eyes White Dragon in some cases, specifically the dragon ones, but in this one they're using Red Eyes Black Dragon. Now, there is a great difference of how to play Blue Eyes against Red Eyes. So when you're playing Blue Eyes, you're just using it for a big beater, which is pretty good. But Red Eyes, what you get to do, you just send it with 7 treasure, you can return it with Secret Order, or you can use Fire Blast like they did in here, dealing 2,500 damage. Now, to most people's eyes, this isn't a really good looking deck. Most of you are probably saying, how do you win with this possibly? As I said before, Parallel Gate is just amazing. When you have no cards in hand, summon 2 normal monsters from a graveyard to your field, and that just makes so much more of a board presence. Even if they're not level 7 or higher, level 6 monsters or level 4 can easily just swarm the board and make things really hard for your opponent. Now this deck specifically is running another little thing that I've noticed a lot more in the recent tournaments. They're running a Pyro engine, which is basically just running a few copies of normal monster, Pyro monsters, and then all out Noodle, which basically mulligans your hand, which gets you into your deck faster, sending out the normal monsters. Another commonly used draw card for these sort of decks is Dawn. Requirement: send 2 cards from your hand to the graveyard, including 1 normal monster, then draw 1 card. Though it does not go +1, the idea is to just send the normal monster to the grave, so you can bring them back later. The entire idea behind these decks is just to send them to grave and bring them back, but it does it so consistently that it is consistently getting tops. Now, because this is the highlight of the format, I will be pulling up another list, which is the Traditional Parallel by Yusa. I say traditional because it is playing a traditional monster in Max Raider. Max Raider was one of the first normal monster focused decks in Rush Duels when Secret Order came out. I don't know why. I think I've seen 3 medium-sized tournament tops with Max Raider, because that is just how good Secret Order is. Resummoning Max Raider against 700 attack and trap protection for the turn. It is phenomenal. Now, this list is running a more baseline sort of deal, but has a lot more interesting card. You of course have the Psycho and the Noodle Jogan, which are both your 2,500 beat sticks, and then your other vanillas. But this deck is running Cannon Soldier, which has been very popular lately just because of the idea you can remove itself from your field. A level 4 beat stick with 1400 attack that can remove itself from the field, so that if you open more than 3 low level monsters and no high level monsters, you can remove itself, set another monster. And in this case, remove itself so you can activate Parallel and all of your other cards that don't want cards in your hand. Then of course, Amazing Dealer, Whispering Fairy, the general staples, and then a fun little thing, Card Devastation. This card has been seen a fair number of play here and there, and this deck uses it very well. Send both players' hands to the graveyard, target a monster on the field gains 300 for every card sent to the graveyard, allowing your monsters to swing over larger monsters or deal more damage if they have trap protection. So Card Devastation also allows you to remove cards from your hand so you can activate your Parallel. And of course you have Magical Stone, which dumps 2 cards from your hand, add a spell back, which would be Parallel or Gates. So it can be other things, but that is typically your main targets for it. It is just a fantastic deck list. A lot of fun to play. I've tried many of these, they're a lot of fun. I do recommend trying a Parallel Gate deck if you want to try something different and new. Up next we do have Ryuma. So of course, as I said earlier, Ryuma is just a Spellcaster Dragon deck. It had an odd number of tops this coming month or last few weeks. This is based on the 29th of February. It's had a small number of tops the last few weeks, around 4 tops, not bad. But the deck is slightly dying out due to the appearance of Secret Order, just letting your opponent summon normal monsters who have trap protection, really lowering the bar on how useful it can be. After that, we do have Overrode. I don't know how this deck has gotten to the point where it is. So a big thing to think about this current format is that with the normal monsters have a set number of attack points, and they don't have any effects, so they can't do any extra little things, which gives you more of a chance to draw into your maximum and go in for a killing blow because they are not playing any reactive trap cards. Not many of them. Some people are playing Mirror Force, others are not, but it's just getting a few sneaky little tops here and there. It is not something that you would be saying is tier 1, it is more or less tier 2, or rogue in a sense. Up next is another new deck, which is Dragonic Pressure. Now this is one of my favorite new decks of this format. It is basically a parallel variant of parallel decks, but for dragons. It is a dragon variant of parallel decks, is what I meant to say. So of course, here's another deck list from a winner as an example. This deck list sadly did not come with a winner name, but I hope you had fun with it. I know I have. So here is a baseline simplistic version of Parallel Dragons with Dragonic Pressure or Dragonic Pressure Dragon. It is very scary and has been seeing a lot of competitive success, though from what I found, I've only was able to get 3 tops from the recent last few weeks, though I've seen a lot of people talk about it and a lot of people post about it, and it's getting second place and third place a lot as well on the times I can find it when I was recording. So the main thing to think about in Dragonic Parallel is the fact that when you activate Dragonic Pressure, you send 3 dragons from your hand to the graveyard, then you can special summon 1 from graveyard in defense position. So that automatically gets 4 cards out of your hand. And then if your last card is Parallel Gate, you can special summon back 2 dragon normal monsters from graveyard, which can be Volcano Dragon, or Blue Eyes, or your other dragons, or possibly Miscellaneous level 7. That is a very important thing to think about when you're playing this deck, is that you always want to have an additional level 7 normal monster that's not a dragon, so that you don't lose to Backbeat or any other thing that's type specific. Pyro is normally the most commonly played beat stick in terms of Parallel Gate, because not many cards in the game directly harm Pyro, and everyone just has it. No one really thinks much of it. Another fun little thing in this deck is you don't play Dragias in this deck, which is a very big surprise to me when I learned about it. The most common thing to do is to play Metagias or Zero Gias, as this person does. He played both of them. You would typically play 3 of one of them and then 1 copy of the other, but this person went down the middle. But Metagias is the top choice. When you summon Metagias, you discard Volcano Dragon or you discard another level 7 or higher, and then you can attack twice with Trap Protection, which is very nice. Then of course you're playing Secret Order in this deck as well, which summons your Volcano Dragon, summon as a 3k beat stick with Trap Protection, Scale Liberation is on the top 5 cards, and then all of your other little things. The deck isn't really made to be tribute summoning that often. I learned that the hard way. This deck is specifically meant for special summoning, which you don't see too often in Dragons, because most Dragon decks these days are just comboing through tribute summons, which kind of is disappointing, but this deck completely dumped that out. You get a free board wipe, and you can easily poke directly for about more than half your opponent's health. It is a very fun deck, and the one I've probably played the most out of every parallel variant, and I hope you guys try it too. Back over to the wheel. Oh, another fun one. We have Imaginary. Imaginary has been a bit off lately, considering the fact that fusion decks have not been too consistently topping as of late. Imaginary is coming back in a weird fashion. Imaginary Actor has been affected by Parallel Gate, where you can summon back 2 fusion materials, if Star Restart wasn't enough for you. And of course, as always, you guys might be interested, so here's another low deck list here. Once again, this was a nameless submission from what I saw, but congratulations, and I hope you enjoyed playing. Now, this is more of a traditional sort of build for Imaginary Actor, but with a little bit of a twist. Of course, you can see all the normal stuff. You can see Dragia's Amazing Dealer, Acebreaker, all the fusion materials and all that, but then there's the new additions to the deck, which is Noodle Shogun, Secret Order, and Parallel Gates. So of course you're doing your regular stuff with summoning a 2500 beat stick through Ninja Jogan, or you're summoning as a 3200 beat stick. This just gets by on the idea that Imaginary Actor don't have much to do in the main deck, so of course you can just use the normal monster engine to summon back fusion materials or get out a big monster to defeat others. And then you can use Parallel Gate to summon Imaginary Actor and a fusion material, and if you have fusion in hand or field, you can fusion summon. It's a very simplistic deck list. It's fairly enjoyable. I've seen a lot of people enjoy it, and it's seen a fair number of good wins. Now, down the list of the rest of the meta contenders, we have just the basic stuff that you've seen in the last format with around 2 to 3 wins for all of them. We have Umi, which is of course just your general water decks and all that. Most playing Daedalus, most not playing Daedalus. It's very confusing right now in terms of Umi, but it still does fairly well. It's a very consistent deck. It sees a handful of play, a good number of victories. After that, we do have the Spellcaster Engine. This is basically all low-level spellcasters with Dark Liberation. Then you have a custom list of boss monsters. Due to the succession of monster with Trap Protection, this engine has been dying down a fair bit compared to pure Ryuma, but it's still something that you can easily sneak a win or 2 in. After that, we do have Machine Mix, which is a mixture of all the machine type cards. So of course you had things like Drilling Mandrill or Shield Kong with the Light Machine cards, which is just a nice little mixture. After that, of course, we have Light Machine, the original tier 1 contender of last format, who still can put up a fight. It's just being very underrepresented currently because of how fast the game is currently getting. Though you can set 3 trap cards, you will easily lose a lot of your protection because your opponent can easily just rebuild their board and swarm the field. This is a fun one. This comes up every other format or so, which is One Breath Piercing. Now, what's interesting about One Breath Piercing in this format is that it is actually seeing a bit more play. which is quite surprising for me because I did not think that it was going to come back. So it has 2 wins under its belt currently, which is not too bad, especially for the deck. So the way one-shot breath works is a wind warrior engine of low level winds. You activate one breath shot, you target a level 7 or higher monster you control against 2000 attack plus piercing. So what most decks are doing is, of course, they're playing Secret Order, but they're also playing Max Raider. Max Raider specifically because it's a warrior in case you want to use it with some sort of miniature warrior engine. And then you'll play the traditional stuff like Dragias and Yami Ruler. So it's not too different, but it is seeing a bit more play with Parallel Gate very rarely, but it is mainly on Secret Order, which is also very important in this format. After that, here's good stuff at 2 wins this format, or this last few weeks. So of course, good stuff is basically like GOAT format, where your deck is 40 cards of staple cards. Where your deck is 40 staple cards. Nothing too interesting, it's just, here's a bunch of good cards in one deck that work individually, so they work together very well. And it's not much to say. Finally is all the miscellaneous decks that got one of wins, and don't really have much to talk about in a sense because those were more small stores and not many high representations, but they still won with their decks and they were listed on the extras. Now we go on to the second part of the list. Whoa! What a crazy transition. Here we have the legend cards of the format. Immediately you will see, wow, that is very well spread, because it is. So here we have around 40 legend cards, represented by the recently submitted decks. The decks that were not accounted for were the previously non-listed cards, or the non-listed decks, or the person played no legend in their deck. Specifically played no legend in their deck, because that is easily notable. So first off, we have a quarter of the pie charts, which is Mirror Force. Mirror Force has been dominating the format. At first, when the format started, not many people were playing Mirror Force. A lot of people started dropping it because after Ryuma, or Spellcaster Engine, was not represented well with their 4 copies of Dark Liberation, people started dropping it off. But as of recent, more people come to realize you can still play Mirror Force. You can still play it as a one-of, and it's still good against all the monsters that are not protected by trap cards. Because typically it would just be Secret Order, protect one monster, then Parallel Gate to non-protected monsters. So more people began to bring back Mirror Force, and it is seen consistent tops as one of the most recordedly played legend cards that I can find. After that, of course, we have Monster Reborn, just 1 win behind Mirror Force. Monster Reborn is a very interesting card. It is basically just another copy of Parallel Gate or Secret Order, but for any monster. You can take an opponent's really good monster from their graveyard, you summon anything from your graveyard. It's just a really decent card that, of course, why would you not play it? That's a very bad explanation, especially when I'm talking about the meta of the game. It's just a very simplistic card, and it fits around your entire theme of not having monsters in your hand, dumping them in the grave, or you can just summon back anything. It's a free extender, of course people would play it. Up next is at 7 wins is Graceful Charity. Graceful Charity is basically a better pot of greed in a sense, and fits the format very well of just drawing 3 cards, dumping 2 that you don't want to your graveyard, because the current metagame is mostly just I need to dig in my deck more to get the card that I need to win. So of course that's a more seen card. After that we have 4 copies of Daedalus, and would you believe me when I said 2 of these Daedalus tops are not in an Umi deck. 2 of these Daedalus tops are in Thunderbolt variants with a very questionable number of plays and tactics. Thunderbolt is mainly playing this because you can easily just resummon monsters in Thunderbolt, and then you can activate Umi for board wipe. it's just it's a weirdly good combo. Apparently it's much better than just playing it in water, and if you don't want to do that, people have also been doing it as a big beat stick. You can play it alongside Grand Extreme, which has been also a fairly decent tech card. Grand Extreme plus Whale, you can summon out a Sea Servant, and then you can nuke. Then you can remove 5 cards from your opponent's graveyard, which really hurts a lot of decks in this format. Though not enough to put it in a tier 1 status, because if you're facing against a Parallel Gate deck or a Thunderbolt deck, they've either have too many cards in the graveyard or they've already summoned their entire graveyard. After that, of course, 3 Pot of Greed. If you don't need a legend in your deck, just play Pot of Greed, and that's what everyone's thinking. This is a real big surprise here. 2 Blue Eyes tops in the last few weeks that I've found. Blue Eyes has been always a weird legend in the original first format, following up around, I believe, 3 to 4 formats after. Blue Eyes White Dragon was a tier 0 legend card because it was the strongest monster in the game, having big stats, and being a dragon was just the best thing to beat. Then after a while it did die down for a good while, though you still saw a few competitive tops here and there, because it's a big monster, yeah. And now with Parallel Gates in the formats, plus Dragonic pressure decks, it's become a lot more consistent and just much better to have a straight up 3k beater over a 2300 beater, which is your Dragonic or Volcano Dragon. So it's been seeing a lot more play, and it's working out very well, and I'm very happy to see it back. Up next we have everyone's favorite promo card, which I think got reprinted in Gold Pack, don't quote me on that, is Red Eyes Black Dragon. Of course, just like Blue Eyes, Red Eyes has seen a niche number of plays since release. It's seen a handful of tops, very rarely here and there, winning as a burn card, but because of course of Secret Order and Parallel Gate, so Secret Order makes it a little more consistent, it's been seen a lot more play in Dragon decks and burn decks. I've seen text with it where you just deal 2400 damage to your opponent, as you probably saw from an earlier profile I showed. And it's a level 7, you use it with 7 Ship of Treasure, which is very strong, which makes it very consistent. So of course the vanilla dragons are back up at top. After that we do have 2 creator tops, which were in 2 OTK decks. I say OTK because it's a very vague deck, because you play a handful of staples and then you play a few good cards, specifically Calgion and Dragias, and along with the new Thunder monster, Blitz Cavalry Trigger Drago. And then of course you play with something like Sonic Duck as well. It's just a generally good card, 3k defender, and Genna Reborn. Then we have 1 lonely top with Tribute to the Doom. There's not much to say about it. It is free removal, but you don't really need it much right now because you'd rather have consistently and more power on board. There hasn't been any other legend tops, so I can't really speak much else on everyone else. The remaining slots on this is not available, just they didn't play any, so I can't talk about them. Now let's move on to the final conversation, which is which parallel list has been seeing the most tops. And here we go, drumroll please. There it is, a very linear top list. Here we have 11 recorded parallel lists. The other lists that I'm missing are either unavailable or have not been posted fully, so I cannot state them. So of course we have a tie for most played, which is Thunderbolt and Dragonic Pressure, no surprise. Thunderbolt is a very flexible deck, you can play it in many different variants. The parallel list has been seeing a lot more success lately because people have been adjusting and modifying the deck so much that you can easily wipe out your opponent's entire back row and then summon a bunch of high level vanillas from your graveyard. It's a very fun deck, and it is very painful to see to play against. After that, of course, we have the 3 tops with Dragonic Pressure. As I said before, it's a free board wipe, and then you can easily just summon a bunch of monsters that OTK your opponent. We have Classical 2 decks for Classical Vanilla, which is basically just Max Raider and purely vanilla monsters to play off the Secret Order and Parallel Gate. 2 Imaginary decks, of course, y'all have seen that, and then a general mix of parallel cards. Just a general mix of good cards plus a parallel engine, so not much to say on that area. Well, I hope you all enjoyed my meta discussion for the last few weeks. Well, if you guys want to hear more about this, leave a like on the video or comment down below, and every other format that we go through, I'll post another one of these videos. Hope you all enjoy. So, you watched until the video ended, huh? Well, I thank you for being a dedicated viewer, and for that I shall give you my words of wisdom. This entire scenario of me looking like this is mostly from boredom and me trying to experiment with stuff. If you guys enjoyed it, I'll continue doing it. If you don't, I might still continue it for a little while longer, see how it goes. Either way, I mostly did this out of boredom and for fun, but mostly boredom, and I accidentally made this when I meant to do something completely different. But either way, I hope you all enjoy.